Thank you, everybody, for joining us today and taking time out of your busy days to come hear our content. So, I guess that I'd like to just kick it off by talking about why we're having this workshop. This is a topic that came to light to me from one of the CEOs we work with, and her company was acquired by private equity, and the private equity firm, when they closed the deal, one of the first questions they asked her was, how's the commercial team look? How are your sales guys? And she was a little taken aback by that. That was one of the first questions that she wanted that they asked her, and she said, they're good. They're really smart. They're technical, and they're good at selling this technical product that we have. They have good relationships. All nice guys. I think they look good. And the private equity guy said, well, they might look good, but what I want to understand is, are they zoo tigers or are they jungle tigers? And I just thought, wow, what a wonderful metaphor. And so we borrow that for this presentation because, at Bluebird Strategic Sales and Marketing, we work hand in hand with our client sales teams. And sometimes those sales teams are not meeting expectations of the management team. And so and then we bring in our friends. And so those friends are on this panel today. So we're gonna talk about what when we run into zoo tigers versus jungle tigers, what are we looking at? And so today we're gonna talk to you. The panel here is made up of really true sales experts. So we've got Jay Blinderman. And over a course of 40 years, Jay has built skills in management, marketing, product management, and sales by servicing roles in Nestle, Coca-Cola, Cardinal Health, Honeywell, BMC Software, and SVT Robotics. Jay is passionate about helping companies sell more, faster, by devising and executing plans that result in achievement of goals, as well as delighted customer and partner experiences. Welcome, Jay. We have Rob Jablonski. He is a Texan made of Polish hardware and Swedish software. Robert has a 30-year plus progressive career at S&P 500 and private equity-backed companies. Did they ever ask you that question about zoo tigers, Robert? He is the founder of Recharge Consulting and Sales Operating System Advisory Company, where he leverages his process-driven revenue growth creator, revenue recharger framework, and he is a consultative selling and sales people accountability expert. Welcome, Robert. And we have Brian Leisinger. Brian is a business strategist and sales performance expert who helps companies align people, processes, and performance with growth goals. As a co-founder of Simplified Sales Strategies, he specializes in building high-performance sales organizations with nearly 30 years of experience. Brian brings practical, embedded approach, acting as a part of the leadership team by developing strategic, measurable results. And of course, I'm your host, Richard Bird, from Bluebird Strategic Sales and Marketing. We're going to talk to you today about how to identify your tigers, how to tell the difference between a jungle tiger and a zoo tiger, how to transform and motivate your tigers so you can hopefully motivate a zoo tiger into becoming a jungle tiger, how to hire for the hunt. So, if you don't have the right tigers and you're looking for a jungle tiger, how do you find one in the wild? And how do you cultivate a thriving jungle and that encourages the right kind of behavior from the tigers? And then we'll save some time for Q&A. And so as you, if you do have questions, please load them in the comment section, and they won't be visible, but we'll see them on our end. So you can put whatever you want in there, and we'll fill those, and then we'll read them out towards the end. So at any time during the presentation, if something comes to mind, just go and drop it in there, and we'll get to it at the end. All right. Well, so let's give the people what they want, what they signed up for here. So identifying tigers. So this is all about learning to distinguish between a zoo tiger and a jungle tiger. And what characteristics and metrics and pipeline analysis do you need to look at in order to tell if you've got a jungle tiger or a zoo tiger on your hand? One quick analogy I always do, think about, that came to mind when the CEO said that was, a jungle tiger's out hunting, prowling, and trying to find their next meal, and a zoo tiger waits for the zookeeper to bring them a steak. And that behavior can go on for a while. But I guess let's kick it off with you, Rob.
Yeah, I think that the question is not if we have those zoo tigers. We have. Every company do have them, right? So this is not that we are able to identify those, that they are so unique. We have those. But the question is, the main question is that have they just happened to be in this company by coincidence, or we have created a system, that these people are getting there? And also, to be honest, guys, and I would be curious about, having your opinion about that. Having, jungle tigers is fantastic. But does it mean that, for any sales job, we really need to have the jungle tigers? Are they not going to be, too destructive, for something, what we need to do? Like, for instance, you are going to have the key account management in place, right? So, guys, if you can maybe, fill that in, what is your experience with that when it comes to, do we need to always have, the jungle tigers? And when this is, not appropriate?
Yeah. No, that's right. That is, I think that is, there's definitely a place for both, right? What are your thoughts, Brian?
So what I found in many organizations is, we were talking about this earlier, that if you have all jungle tigers, it is a distraction, as Rob was saying. But what you need to identify is what the goal of the organization is. Are we trying to grow exponentially? And then we match that goal with our desired outcomes and share expectations across the team, because there absolutely is a place. And in a lot of the organizations I work with, I typically like to have both working together, hand in hand, in conjunction. While the jungle tigers out hunting new logos, I've got the zoo tigers growing the account from within, which gives you the double benefit, right? So I absolutely love having both on the team, but it really goes back to what the desired outcome is for the company, and then understanding who the players are on that team.
Yeah. That's a very good that's a very good point, because if you look at that, it's very appealing, to have this conversation about jungle tigers and zoo tigers. But in the end of the day, those of us who manage really the sales organizations, we would like to have the wolf packs, right? And in wolf pack, you are going to have very different functions. All of them are going to be predators. But this is for different roles, for different purposes. And I think this is so important when you are going to hire those people in joining your organization. As Brian said, just to understand what purpose is for this specific role. And what? Let's not be cheated. That every salesperson we are going to have the interview with, she is going to tell us that they are really these hungry hunters, those predators. Let's be honest, 95% of the salespeople I have met in my, 35 years of career managing the sales, they are not jungle tigers. They are, zoo tigers in disguise very often. They are speaking about, something, but when it comes to the true behavior, this is really not the case. Again, the question to you guys, and maybe also to the audience, you can ask those questions or maybe answer, in the chat. How are you going to recognize through the interviewing questions that you are sitting with in front of the zoo tigers in disguise?
I'll jump in. I mean, because we look at this a lot, and a lot of the organizations we go into, the front part of it, because I will tell you, jungle tigers aren't looking for a job. So you've got to find a way to attract them. But then when they come in, you've got to find a way to challenge them, because they are a very rare breed, and very, very seldom do you find somebody that's good at both roles, but they're out there, right? So when we're going through it, we got to ask questions like, what percent of your activity was aimed at new business in your career, right? What percent of your pipeline is over 90 days? Because jungle tigers are constantly trying to feed. And then if you really look at it, if we look at successful people are successful wherever they go. They just don't know any better. So we start asking how you were successful, what led you to, what do you enjoy the most out of sales? And if it's, building relationships, growing accounts, it's probably more of the zoo tiger role. If it's about adding new labels, I enjoy prospecting, I like meeting new people, that's probably more your jungle tiger, right? So you got to look at it and say, well, what does it take to be successful in the organization? In your career, what have you done that's made you successful? And as they talk about, man, I just got out there, I prospected, I was on the road meeting new people. Those are the type of people that are going to fit more into that profile for that jungle tiger, right? And then when you say, well, what do you need? And they say, well, I need, leads and I want to talk to your clients. That is the typical zoo tiger, and it has a very relevant role in the organization. So depending on that outcome again, so as you're interviewing, you got to throw them off their game, challenge them, role play with them, flip the script, because salespeople are good at one thing, and that is sales. So you got to get them out of that, get them into the role play, get them off their game so that we understand what their true motivation is and how they've been successful performing. I hope that helps.
It's a good point. One of those things that you're really looking at when having these interviews with candidates is that what is the reason that you are sitting in front of me? Are you running away from the existing job and you are full of complaints about this doesn't work, SDRs don't give me leads, marketing sucks, this and that, or they are just like, no, I'm going after something else, and I thought that your company might be good. So what is really this desire, this motivation, this burning platform? One of those things, guys, to look at maybe behavioral traits is that, are they complaining about everything, or they are saying, you know what, I was behind that, I made a mistake, this is how I reflected on that, this is how I corrected this is what I'm going after. If these are people who are just saying, give me more, give me more, give me more, this doesn't work, this needs to be perfected, stay away from them. Yes? If you are searching for the jungle tiger, really. And there is science also behind these hiring things. You don't need to use that, but there are, let's say, 3 buckets, and there is this very well-known saying: hire for attitudes and train for skills. So sometimes when you are having this, even in the job description on demands, hey, I need to have from this individual 15 years plus of experience, from the healthcare industry. Is it really so? Is it really so important? Or maybe these value-adding activities and this drive is actually much more important for you, and you can train those people, for this, specifics of the specific industry. For me, there are 3 buckets. I'm looking at, is this, do they have this will to sell? Is this drive, this desire? And you are not able, to teach this. Either you have that in yourself or you don't. Second, you need to have something, which is called, this sales DNA. Like, for instance, how do they, manage, with rejection? Let's be honest, that is one of these things that this is, part of our job, being in sales, that 90% of the cases, especially with the first outreach to the clients, you are going to be rejected. Those people who don't have, this in their DNA, they are going to be down. They are going to resign. They are not going to be really motivated. Those people who are really, those tigers who are really hunting and they have the desire, they're going to say, so what? I'm going to improve on the next one. I'm going to, to see that, that the glass is half full instead of, just half empty. And then the last piece is this, all of these things that you have to train those people about. But my approach was always like that. If this is not mission critical, you can always train those people on those, specifics on the industry, on the job, on the function. But if they don't have, this spark when it comes to, this self-drive and this sales DNA, you can do whatever you want, but you are not going to be very successful with that. Let's be honest. Agree, guys?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love, one of my favorite questions is, what's your favorite part of sales? We talked about that one, but then when you start talking about what's your biggest recent win? Well, I grew my book by, right? Or, hey, I just closed these 3 big accounts, largest in the company, right? Those are the other things in that interview process. So I agree 100% with you, Rob.
Yeah, and so there are things I'm looking at behavioral traits, asking those questions to really discover very quickly, is this the zoo tiger in disguise? So this is really a substance for having the jungle tiger in front of you. But there is also those questions about as Brian just asked about past successes and current successes. What is the pathway for success when it comes to looking at this, what we call it like a pipeline management or maybe KPIs? And you will very quickly discover who you are sitting in front of with. If these people are just saying hey, I'm having, this relationship with those people for the last 15 years, and I'm managing the status quo. This is great. Ask those questions. Is this the key account manager? And would you like to have that person in you? Or if your business is really on a pathway, for rapid scaling up, is this the person who is going to give you any likelihood that you are going to have any revenue from new clients? Because if these people are going to tell you, you know what, 50% of my revenue is coming from the new logos. 50% of the revenue is coming, from my own activities that I have found them. I have engaged with them. I had, fantastic discovery call with them. This is where you are saying, that you are sitting in front of, someone who is going to take your company to the next level. And again, as Brian said, this is not about being perfect. Let's be honest. We are not perfect. Those people are not perfect. They are making mistakes. If they are speaking loudly about this, if they are able to make, some self-correction about what they have done in the past, something based on observations, this is the person you would like to have, because these people are going to be coachable. Because this is another piece, and I would like to have your comments on this. For me, it is so important that these people we are going to have in the organization, and they are going to have this spark of being this jungle tiger. First and foremost, they are coachable. Even if you think about those jungle tigers, we think that these are predators. They are not able to be managed. They can be managed. They would love to get your feedback, coaching. They would like to self-reflect. They are able to take that and change. Those people who are the zoo tigers, they are already in a flash. Yes, they already are perfect. They don't need to change. They already have mastered that for the last 15 years. Avoid these people, because this is one of those things I've learned, that if you are going to have even the perfect performer in the past companies, but these people are not going to be coachable, you are going to fail. And by the way, this is not about this person. This is about the entire pack, entire team. Because if you are going to tolerate this person and this person is going to be untouchable, you are going to create a lot of disaster for the rest of the organization.
Yeah, well, that is absolutely right. I heard one of my friends in Vistage always says, "You get what you tolerate," and I think that's definitely true in the sales team. And I think one red flag that occurred to me when you're talking about that, Rob, was that when sometimes we walk in and we start talking to the salespeople about marketing stuff, and they're like, "Richard, you don't understand. This is a relationship-based business." And that is a definite sign of a zoo tiger to me, because it's like, of course, every business is a relationship-based business. Every sale is a relationship-based sell. They have relationships with all your other competitors too.
Sure.
But I think that brings me to our next. One thing you highlighted on there is, can you transform and motivate these tigers?
Yes, no, maybe. So, I think if the system have made really jungle tigers to tolerate it and change and behave and be nice, this is doable. But if the system just took from the outside, just these zoo tigers, those people who are not willing to change, who are not able to absorb this coaching comments, that's going to be difficult, to be honest with you guys. And I think, again, this is not about just burning the fire beneath them. This is about thinking about, have I built a system which is just forcing these people to be caged? Do I have my conversations, my team meetings, my one-on-ones with these people, that this is actually putting all of them into thinking about, we need to be polite, we need to just behave, we need to do the right stuff, we need to follow, what is in a CRM system. There is this saying, and be very, very cautious about this, where to use it and where not. What kind of people would you like to have in one situation? Do you want them to just ask for permission all the time, or ask for forgiveness in some cases? And you need to be very cautious with this, because ask for forgiveness, it has to be very clearly, discussed, with them. We are here to grow, as we said, rapidly grow from new clients, from new products, from providing, maybe value-based selling. This is about testing new things. This is about being creative, right? This is about coming up with something novel, because we are not able to, predict all of this and define all of this and support all of that. And I think that this is also one of those shades that you could see with these jungle tigers. they are going to be creative. They are going to come up with their own ideas. Sometimes they are going to fail, but they are going to discuss with you, what works, what doesn't. So I think that this is so important that, first of all, let's take a look at our system. I give you the example. You mentioned, Richard, about this private equity company. I had been many years with this, Fortune 500. Sometimes you have organizations which are talking too much about, for instance, our contribution margin is 33.05, and they talk. This is important, right? Because we need to be profitable. But sometimes the emphasis is really, behind this comma thing, and then people are kind of caged because we need to deliver that. We need to explain all of these nitty-gritty details. The conversation is not about what we have designed this organization for, what we have hired these people for, right? This rapid growth from new clients, from new products. And I think that sometimes we as leaders, we unintentionally make this situation this way, that we are just formatting these people, that they are becoming like a zoo tigers. They would like to maybe set free, but they don't know how to really communicate with us. So this is so important what I'm saying. What is our system? For instance, what is compensation system? What do we reward those people for? And let's be honest, these reward systems are not given to us by God. That has been created by us. So I think this is so important when we are speaking about, okay, we need to identify how many of those jungle tigers do we need to have? What for do we need to have the zoo tigers? How to manage that entire flock, right? That entire pack. This is also about asking this question: what do I need to change as a manager, managing those people? And what do I need to change when it comes to my communication to the executive team? Because there has to be also buy-in and understanding, from that level, how to communicate with us, how to set objectives, and how to have, this dialogue with us. Guys, anything to add?
Yeah, so we've all seen it, right? We talk about putting them in the cage, right? The top salesperson just did so well. We put them into management. We're surrounding them, right? So what I found is once you put them in, it's hard to rehabilitate them, to release them in the wild. What we find is unless there's a motivating factor, it could be a kid going to college. It could be a kid getting married, a new car, themselves getting married. Unless there's that motivating factor, it's really, really hard to rehabilitate somebody. So we have to understand very early how to not put the bars around the jungle tiger and keep him in the wild growing free.
Exactly. I have seen so many situations that, you have fantastic sales organization and they measure a lot of great things and they're really on top of that. But the discussion in the end of the day is that how many cold calls have you created? How many, emails have you sent? It is not value adding very often. You as manager and the system, operator, you need to understand what is really value creating activities and what is just, ingredients that we need to, manage there. But our emphasis during the team meetings and one-on-ones and the coaching feedback shouldn't be about, this granularity. It's about, how many emails have you sent? I rather would like to understand, how many value-adding, meetings and interactions with the clients have you generated with the new ones, right? So this is what I'm trying to say is that this is less about, complaining about these people and putting more fire beneath them. This is about us thinking about how we as managers need to act and how to change the entire system. So we are not going to be making them to become really zoo tigers.
Yeah, absolutely. Jay, what do you think?
No, I mean, I had made a couple of notes as both Robert and Brian were kind of going through some things, but what I found, to add on to a couple of additional thoughts, is the jungle tigers are usually great at being sponges. They've excelled at what they do because they use the tools available to them to create success. And zoo tigers are the opposite of that. I think this has already been said. They tend to put up barriers. We don't have the answer for this, or we don't have the use case for that. And so they're not very outgoing. They're not very exploratory. They're not very proactive. So I think what you'll find is that zoo tigers or rather jungle tigers are very proactive. But in terms of just transforming and motivating them, one of the things that I've found is that these best performers are usually willing to share with others what leads to their success.
Very good point.
That doesn't mean they want to be in management, but they're coin operated, which is fantastic, but they are willing or able to share the wealth because they're not competing with other people on the team necessarily, unless it's for like an annual sales trip. But in terms of daily putting money in the bank account, they're willing to help others do what they've done. The other thing that I found to be very transformative and motivational, because I've been in both sales roles and marketing roles, is that as a marketer, the top salespeople, jungle tigers, were always willing to let me go on a call with them or listen into a call. Because they're, like I said, they're in that sponge mode. They're in that learning mode.
Good point.
So they want the feedback. But I find that those things are very motivating for them. When they're asked to support the product team or the marketing team for the benefit of the whole team, that's another reward for them that my experience has been they tend to appreciate that. They enjoy it. They like being asked.
Love it. Yeah. And I think it's the opposite with the zoo tigers, right? It's like, hey, I want to go on a ride along with you. Why?
Yeah, exactly. What's your goal? What's your initiative? Why? I don't need anybody checking up on me.
Yeah, exactly. I know what I have to do. And also, I think, guys, bear in mind, I'm having, something, I'm asking always, this question, sitting and having this one-on-one or team meetings, interviews. People are very often telling you, how busy they are, how, many hours they put into something, that 12 hours today, 14 hours, I have been traveling. And you have to be, asking this question always to yourself. It's easy to be busy, but are you really productive? And those, those jungle tigers, they are going to even come to you as a manager and say, hey, this system is stupid. I don't want to do this. I'm wasting so much time. So this is really, something what is extremely important, that those people are going to get to you and say, hey, I want to really have success, and success comes from this, stems from that. This is stupid. Let's change that. Those people who are going to be zoo tigers, they're going to just tell you, how busy they have been. 14 hours today, Brian. How about that? Yeah, but we haven't sold anything for the last three months.
Yeah.
Oh man, I love it. That is great. All right, well, let's talk about that, because I think we touched on some of this in that about hiring for the hunt. And so I think, how do you, Brian, you already talked a little bit about some of this stuff, but I agree 100% with you. The jungle tigers are not looking for a job. They're out selling stuff. So how do you attract them? How do you go about that?
So one of the fun things is, if you post an ad on a job board, the jungle tigers aren't going to see that. The zoo tigers that are looking for a new job may, and they're looking at duties, responsibilities, and pay, right? That is what they're looking for. So we've encouraged our clients, and I got this through one of my friends, Megan, and she said, you've got to treat them how they treat their clients. Engage them in the things that they're motivated by, which is success, challenge, upside, unlimited upside potential, whatever that may be. You've got to completely flip the script, because if we get the wrong person in the wrong role, it doesn't just cost us today. It costs us momentum for the future and puts us behind the 8 ball. So we have to know what we're hunting for. We have to be clear in messaging. And another friend of mine, Lisa Skipper, she always says clear is kind and unclear is unkind. But specific is terrific, right? So as we go through these things, we've got to be specific in what we're looking for, setting expectations, setting challenging expectations, and then we will attract the right people. The other thing I find is that most jungle tigers run in the pride, right? They're a group of people that hang out together because they challenge each other. They enjoy the hunt together. They love talking about success. So typically when I'm talking to somebody, I'm looking at my vendors, my other clients, and I'll say, hey, tell me about some of the people that you're working with today that you think just stand out. So as we're looking for these people. We've got to attract them in with the bait so that they'll go hunt it so we can get them in. but then we've got to treat them. They are looking for the company and the management style that will challenge them daily and give them what they need. Okay. Jay, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about some of this too.
No, what I was going to add is that specific is very important, but the other thing that I think some companies tend to get too specific on is only looking for candidates in their industry.
Oh, God.
And I just think that's a big mistake. If you are a proven jungle tiger, you're going to thrive in any environment for a primary reason that you know what questions to ask. In fact, you know to ask questions, because it's not about what you know or how well you know the product. It's about how great of a job do you do on probing on the prospect's problem statement. And jungle tigers across any industry have that as a common trait. So if you can, feel that out from people or ask the right questions yourself of, how they overcome certain things, you'll learn whether that person is, ready for your environment or not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing we're looking for is when we're in an interview, as we're trying to find these jungle tigers or even the zoo tigers, is when we get them to talk about what they've done. They like to say, oh, I grew, I did this, I do all this activity. I think Jay said this earlier. But when you start getting into the details, the jungle tiger will tell you, man, I had to go. They get real specific with, man, it takes me this many calls to get this many appointments, to get this many in my funnel, to get this many closed by this time. They've already figured it out, right? The zoo tigers typically say, well, I've done all this, and they're very general in theirs because they're growing a client base, and that is a great thing as well. So depending on what that customer is looking for or the client, right, we've got to make sure we're hiring for what we want them to do, and they're giving us the answers that prove it.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you that. I think that interviewing is a really interesting approach. How do you interview a jungle tiger, Brian?
So my interviews are a little different because, I will tell you, I'm not going to give you everything, but we can do a whole other session on this because they're very different because most of my clients are looking for that jungle tiger. So I literally have a process I walk through. I don't bring them in-house until I've screened them a couple of times, because how they act on that phone screen is exactly how they're acting with my clients once I get them on board. If they can't sell value through there, if they're not asking great questions, they're not providing proof and value and structure on how they become successful, then I probably don't need them. Then as I get through it, I'm waiting for them to ask me the right questions, and by all means, we always close for the next step. If they're not closing on that interview and they say, hey, I know everything I need to know, and I say, okay, there's nothing else you need, and they go, yeah, I'll wait to hear back from you. Zoo tigers, not a jungle tiger, right? When I bring them in, I'm a lab type person, not a lecture type person. So in my interviews, they're all behavioral. Everything's a test. Everything's a role play. And we just have fun with it. I can get into specifics, but I don't think we have time. But at the end of the day, successful salespeople, once they understand what they just went through, they love it. Unsuccessful, or people that don't want to break out and build and exponentially grow, they get very frustrated with my interview style.
Yeah.
And I think I would like to add something to this. And I think that, for me, it is also important, we will always believe now that interviews is about us asking questions. For me, actually, it's much more important about what kind of questions these people are going to ask me. Like, for instance, if you're going to have someone like, what is going to be my package? That is one, right? But how do you create leads, and how many am I going to get?
Yeah.
Okay, that's kind of, like a wording client. But if they're going to ask you a question, who are the people I'm going to sell to, and what is the problem that we are solving? Big. Oh, now we are talking, right? Something. So I think it is also important. This is what I try to say: that interview is not only for us asking these questions, but really being prepared. What kind of questions they are going to pose to us, because that is going to indicate what kind of individual we have in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's funny. We'll look at the sales transcripts, and Jay told me about this tool Gong. and it'll tell you how many questions they ask. And you can see the jungle tigers ask like 43 questions in an hour, and the zoo tigers ask like 3. How are you doing today? And are you ready?
How much time do we have today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Great. All right. Let's move on to the next section here. So, cultivating a thriving jungle. I think this is really important because I think we've made good fun of zoo tigers, right? But I think sometimes it's how the management team has motivated them, and like Jay said, they're coin operated, and good salespeople are. So, what are you motivating them with the right kind of compensation package, and there's other things that we consider. Jay, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And, there's a few different things in there that I want to cover in the next couple of minutes. So, and it comes down to not just motivation, but just building a high performance sales team, which is what we're talking about here, in terms of these jungle tigers. So first thing I want to touch on, which you can see on the slide, what those 3 things are, is I want to go through aligning compensation with the outcomes, ensuring continuous training and sales enablement, which is super important, and then finally influencing a culture of innovation. Because when you can do these 3 things, when you can use these 3 levers effectively, it's going to help you develop a great sales organization. So I know we've talked a couple of times around compensation on this call, but and I definitely have heard Rob mention it, and I know Brian's familiar with this as well, but the thing you got to ask yourself about aligning compensation with results is your comp structure aligned with the results that you expect from your sales team? Or does it align with your company's strategic initiatives? Because too often companies provide rewards for activity instead of things that actually impact the sales cycle. And that's a costly mistake. So as an example, don't just pay for people to schedule any meeting they can get. Pay for meetings with a targeted role at a prospect who's likely to have a business problem that your problem can solve. Because random meetings aren't useful. When we pay for the wrong things, we fund low value work, we stretch out sales cycles, and worse, we demotivate high performers, which is a topic we talked about a few minutes ago, of motivating, these jungle tigers. So high performance cultures reward meaningful contributions. And to get the best results, we need to reward the appropriate behavior, which are things that result in the outcomes that your organization expects. And I would expect that every company out there, whether it's the product team or the marketing team, knows what those outcomes are. The leadership team certainly knows what they are. And they can also help you if you need help identify, like I said, paying for the right things. Second thing I want to talk about is back to questioning, what mechanisms do you have in place for continuous training and sales enablement? And the reason this is critical is that even if you have the right comp plan, your team's going to stall if you don't have great sales enablement.
Yeah.
Fact of the matter is, companies with a former sales enablement program outperform those that don't have any program at all or don't have a good one. And that's not my opinion. I mean, that's backed by lots of research from companies like Miller Hyman, Aberdeen Group, and others. Seen articles from Gartner, Forrester, you name it. They all touch on sales enablement. The bottom line is your sales reps need to clearly understand what problem or what problems your product solves, who those problems matter to, and who the decision makers are at those prospective companies. And the question you should be asking yourself is, are our product and marketing teams refreshing that knowledge regularly for our sales teams? Mm-hmm. And my guess is they're probably not. Because a lot of companies think that sales enablement is simply an onboarding function. Mm-hmm. And I'm here to tell you it's not. Mm-hmm. Sales enablement isn't onboarding, nor is it ad hoc training. It's actually like a continuous improvement cycle. It's constant alignment between the sales team, the product team, and the marketing team on what matters to your buyers. I mean, it is a real-time feedback loop, because if marketing gives something to your sales team and that doesn't resonate with prospects, salesperson didn't do anything wrong. That feedback needs to be shared back with marketing and product, that, hey, these questions aren't resonating, or these points aren't resonating. And people need to sharpen their spear to, get better at that. But that feedback is critical. And it's important and critical to think about it in terms of the customer journey. So does your sales team have the right assets at every stage of the customer journey? And does everyone know what those assets are, where they reside? Are they in a library? Are they buried in a CRM that no one goes to? Where do they find those things? And the reason I think this is so important and oftentimes overlooked is that one of the most common mistakes I see is a sales team that creates new materials for every single sales cycle. I'm here to tell you, if that's happening, that's on us. If that's happening, we're not enabling them. We're leaving people stranded and unprepared. So you really got to think about yourself in a management capacity as this, leadership coach in some respects. You got to think like a coach, anticipate, in this case, the opponent, who's your prospect, what objections are they going to have? And we've got to continuously provide the team, the sales team, with the resources that are going to put them in a position to win.
I love that, Jay. That is such a good point, because I think we hear that a lot. We'll ask our clients at the beginning, how long's your sales cycle? And we work with a lot of technical companies, and they're like 18 months. Yeah. And I'm like, great. What's your sales process? And they're like, what do you mean sales process? I'm like, well, it seems like there might be more than one step involved in there, and maybe marketing could support the salespeople in an 18-month sales cycle.
Yeah. 18-month sales cycle, even if you're selling a nuclear reactor, is a really long time.
Yeah.
And probably doesn't need to be, and probably infers you don't understand the customer journey. Final thing I wanted to talk about is this whole idea of culture of innovation, which is interesting when you think about innovation in sales, because you don't necessarily want, salespeople aren't creating product, but they are helping cultivate opportunities. And there might be some innovative ways to do that, but you got to think about the environment you're creating for them as well. So early in my career, very early, as my daughter references the dinosaur age, salespeople had an office to go to. And that sales office served as a learning environment. And I wanted to point out that water cooler talk wasn't small talk at those offices. And then for those of you who are on the call who aren't dinosaurs like me and maybe don't know what a water cooler is, then I'll reference today's version of a water cooler, which is my wife's Stanley cup that I borrowed. But that water cooler talk is super important, because it's how I learned as a sales rep what was working and what wasn't working. I got to hear what questions people were asking, what responses they were getting to those questions. And then I got to learn too, what companies were playing what I call stump the chump. They were just asking questions to stall things, primarily because they probably weren't really a good target. But the important thing is that in today's remote world, these learnings that happened at the water cooler, they just don't happen by accident anymore. We're going to have to engineer today's version of water cooler talk. And so my recommendation is to create some intentional time to share wins and losses across your entire sales team. As a side note, I want to point out that peer-to-peer learning tends to be much more effective than manager to subordinate learning.
Mm-hmm.
So when you engineer these thoughtful sessions, have them be led by the sales team. Have them be led by these jungle tigers. I alluded earlier that most of them are willing and able to share. So put them on the spotlight. And when they get on these calls or face-to-face meetings, however you do it, you want them to help the whole team understand who at the prospect was involved, what questions that you asked that worked, what questions didn't work, what objections came up, how were you able to handle those objections? And keep in mind that these aren't just stories, they're data points. And these data points are actually fuel cross-functional learning. And it's important that they be shared not just among the sales team, but that they be shared among the product team and the marketing team as well.
Yep.
And I'll follow up on that. I love that. I love that because when I'm working with my customers, we have a weekly meeting and every rep is there. Marketing is there. Operations is there. And what I want to do is I want everybody to go through it because I don't have to be right. I just have to get to the right place. Here's another saying. It's one of Bill and Brian's isms is none of us are smarter than all of us. So if we have the collaboration, there is a lot to be shared. And you're right. Those jungle tigers typically lead that pack and it helps everyone achieve what they're going after. Right. So absolutely. I love that concept, Jay.
No, I appreciate that input, Brian. Back to this whole idea of innovation, I think it's really important that you encourage the team to experiment. So you can still be down the fairway with talk tracks and targeting the appropriate persona or appropriate audience, but that doesn't mean you can't try things new. But I'd also encourage that you fail fast. And then when you do that, you share those results back with your team, back with the marketing team, back with the product team. Because the faster we do these things and we fail, the faster we learn. And when we're doing that, we're building real innovation into the culture. And that's going to give you that thriving, jungle tiger environment that you're really looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, one of the things to think about from a marketing perspective and being part of that, whenever a jungle tiger comes back from a sell, you could tell they're fired up when they had a really good sales call. And I would love to capture them in that moment because, and the question I always ask is, well, hey, at what point in the presentation did the prospect's eyes light up?
Yeah.
And that's when, you got the gold, right? It's like, great. Let me spread that out to everybody.
So I like that, Richard, because we always say emotion creates motion, right? So when they come in with that emotion, it creates motion across your sales organization. And so sharing that feedback with everyone is just a momentum builder for the organization. And I want to also, it's another, I don't know where I got this one, but freedom without feedback leads to chaos. You got to give them the feedback, but you got to give them the freedom. But feedback without freedom creates resentment. You need both.
Yep. I think it's super important, this slide and what Jay has been talking about and his experiences. And I think that, guys, it's so important to also mention that, sales is this domain that is about practicing. And what we are talking about here, this is not about just saying, oh, we are good, we are bad when it comes to, identifying those jungle tigers, the zoo tigers. There is going to be change management. And then we know, one thing is to have the blueprint, strategy, plans, and, the ambitions. Another thing is to implement that. And let's be honest, very often we are going to struggle with this. And that's going to be like a mandatory thing that we are going to go through that. How to hold people accountable and how to hold yourself accountable. And in the end of the day, this is what I love about, this slide by Jay. In the end, accountability is a super complex thing. If that would be different, everybody, wouldn't have any problem with that. But in the end of the day, in my mindset, that boils down to these two foundational things. If I'm talking to this person and there is difficulties to hold him or her accountable, can she do that? That is about this enablement. Have I done everything that she is not able to say that I can't? And there is another one. Could she do something different instead of this? And how to give this feedback, what Brian said. So I think that this is going to be about, what we are talking about here is to understand where we are, where we would like to go, but just to understand this is going to be a process. Change management is going to be a process, and in the end of the day, that's going to be about, this really us being in, these sales management seats, about, identifying, this. Is it about the can she do that, or this is could she do something else, and how to really manage that?
Yeah. I want to kind of tag on to what Robert just said. It reminded me of a story back to my dinosaur age, but early in my career was in a sales role with Nestle. And this whole idea of practicing pitches is something that's critically important. I think a lot of companies forget. But when I was a starting sales rep with Nestle, I would call on a supermarket manager in order to get a new product on the shelf. And the product I distinctly remember as being Fancy Feast cat food, all 39 cents per can of it. It's probably $1.50 now, but it was 39 cents then. It was a premium cat food. And I remember having to give a pitch to my manager for the newest flavor, ocean whitefish and tuna. Cat food, people. And I had to not only pitch my manager, but I had to pitch my manager's manager before they cut me loose to actually go pitch a grocery store manager. And the reason I think this is a great example is probably no one on the call today is selling 39 cents worth of anything.
Yeah.
You're selling hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of products or services. And you should be asking yourself, are you inspecting the pitches that people are making in front of a qualified prospect? And more often than not, I find companies aren't doing that. Yeah. They're not doing that. Yeah. And it's part of this enablement process. It's part of what Brian talked about, part of what Rob and Richard talked about. But, don't overlook the importance of that. It's just the idea of inspecting what you expect. Yeah. You should be able to check the box that people are prepared. And if they're not prepared, that's on you as a manager.
Very good stuff.
Well, hey, we have a couple of questions coming in from the audience, and I definitely want to take time out for this. So the first one is, how do you ensure that you have the right compensation plan for your sales team? And that's probably, it depends. Is the ultimate answer for that. But what do you think, Rob?
Maybe I will start. Yes. I think that, the question, first of all, is what is the purpose for the sales organization? What do we want to attain? What is our objective? What is the from to? And then, this compensation scheme is going to, has to really be aligned with that. I always do it, such a way that, of course, in the end of the day, that is going to be this, order book, right? But it shouldn't be just, the single thing, because order book, it could be, an effect of, number of different things. So I would like to have additionally, one or two components, which is going to accentuate and reward specific value-adding activities. So this is not about, having 5 calls a day, but having a one discovery call, which is going to result in a fantastic demo with the right client in the right ICP, in the right size of the company. But first of all, it really starts with this. There is no blueprint for that. Where do we go? What is our objective? What is the reason for having that function, that person?
One thing that we see, and you guys chime in if you see this too, but sometimes people have a comp structure, but then their business model changed and they don't go back and revisit that. So we had a client that they sold software, and they were all about, getting the renewals and the new box of software delivered on-prem. But then, they went cloud-based, and they could not convince the salespeople. They were so used to selling the upgrade every, 2 years or whatever, that they did not want to sell the cloud-based solution because it was something that was different for them. And the compensation model didn't help. It was still, getting a percentage of the on-prem sell. You guys see that?
Accountability thing, right? Can they do that? Yes, they probably have been trained. Could they do something different? Yes, the system allows them to do something different, and the manager allows that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, compensation drives behavior, right? So back to what Rob was saying is, if your compensation plan does not match your strategic plan, then something's broke. If your top rep is capping out, your compensation plan is broke, right? So I like accelerators. If you go above and beyond, you get more. And if you're looking for these jungle tigers, that's what motivates him. Hey, I'm at 119% of plan, but at 125, I get X percent more. They're going to push for it. So we've got to motivate and drive our jungle tigers based on our desired outcomes as a company and make sure our compensation structure matches.
I agree.
Here's another question that came up. This was directed at you, Jay. What sales enablement tactics have you seen that really improve performance?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to plagiarize something that my mentor taught me many, many years ago, which is something I've instilled in multiple companies, which is a tool that's simply called This Week, Next Week. And what it is I ask the sales team to tell me what are the 3 things, not 5, not 7, not 19. What are the 3 things you absolutely, unequivocally have to get done this week to move your most strategically important opportunities forward? That's the this week part. The next week part is, what are the 3 things you're going to have to do next week? What are those next 3 things you're going to have to do that are strategically important to move those forward? And then when I usually have these calls on a Monday, but some companies prefer to do them on Fridays. But if I'm on that Monday call, I've got a running list that, by the way, I ask all the reps to fill this thing out. It's almost like a listserv. And I can go back and test people or do what I said before, inspect what you expect. You didn't touch on one of the 3 things you mentioned last week. So can I help you with something? Is there something I can, help you get over a hurdle on, or, what occurred? So I find that tool to be super helpful. It's very simple. It's pretty easy to follow, but it also helps the sales team prioritize the work that matters most. Yeah. And it's back to that whole compensation model. Don't, like I had said in my talk, don't just pay for random meetings. Like, busy work doesn't matter. Like, what are you doing to move the needle forward? What are you doing to get stuff done? So this tool, this week, next week, I find to be pretty effective at helping people get stuff done.
I love that. I love nice, simple tools like that are so good for holding salespeople holding salespeople. I think salespeople are probably some of the hardest people to hold accountable because they sell their way out of stuff, right? So I love that tool.
Except for jungle tigers, right? They are easy.
Exactly. And we have our time's up, but we do have one more question. I would like to go ahead and walk through this. This is for Brian. When is it appropriate to have a zoo tiger, Brian?
So it's a great question because I'm actually working with a client right now. They have their jungle tigers out in the field, but what's happening is the jungle tigers bringing in the accounts, then they've got to onboard them, then they got to service them, and they're spending all this time servicing, which is putting them in a cage, so to speak, in a box, right? So what I find is we're developing a 3-point system, 3-touch system, which I think is critical in a whole nother way. But if I can get the jungle tiger out there, going out, bringing it back, transitioning to an onboarding specialist, getting into a customer success relationship, and still continue to touch, because I do think there's something to be said for bringing on a client and having a trail, right? As long as they're buying from me on MRR or new projects or more projects, I want to pay them. But I give bonuses based on new business to the organization. So an extra percentage of compensation, right? But if I can't keep that person out in the field and they don't trust that we're going to onboard them and get them up successfully and service them back at the office, then that person's going to get stuck servicing, right? Yeah. So these guys want to make cash. The quickest way to make cash is bringing on new customers and making sure we continue the relationships. There's always a touch, But if I can get somebody working with them on the back end, because what happens if I'm in the field? I'm on another appointment. My client has an issue. Well, they can't get a hold of me. Now what happens? Customer satisfaction starts going down, right? But if I have a 2 to 3 point touch with that customer, they've always got the right response, customer support, and then that sales touch to continue the momentum, right? So I do like having multiple touches, because what happens if Brian gets hit by a bus? Well, if I was the only one working with that customer, it's going to be hard to get back in there, right?
Yeah.
So I think almost any organization I've ever worked in, I've always had that 2-touch system.
I love that. I think that's definitely true in professional services, because, when you're doing a professional services sell, it is very consultative, and they're like, well, I found my consultant. And then now you're jungle tiger stuck in the zoo. Yeah. Wow. That's great. We're out of our time, but what I'd like to do is just tell the audience, thank you for joining us again. And if you enjoyed today's talk, we'll be sharing a recording. And so put your email address in the chat if you would like for us to send that to you. And you can also scan this QR code with your phone, and this will bring you to the Bluebird webpage. And you can ask us to send you the live recording as well. But what I would, as you could tell, we have a very, very knowledgeable panel, and we are only able to go so deep on these subjects, and we'd love to go deeper on these subjects if you guys want to. So let us know some topics that you would like to learn more about, and would be glad to talk and go take a deep dive on some of those topics. So thanks again. And by the way, I forgot to mention, we are going to do this again next quarter. We're going to have another webinar next quarter. So think about what you want us to talk about. All right. Well, thanks again for joining, and we will catch you next time.